Thank you for joining us for our alumni webinar series. I'm Kevin Gash, a senior lecturer in film and TV production in the School of Arts at York St John University. I've been asked to host this webinar as part of the York St John University alumni series, Alumni Journeys, Creativity, Careers and Community. Before I introduce today's speaker, there are a few housekeeping matters. We will be hosting a question and answer session at the end of the talk. The questions have been prepared in advance, but if you have any questions you would like to ask the speaker, please email them to alumni@yorksj.ac.uk and the team will pass on your questions. There is also an auto transcript appearing during the talk for increased accessibility. However, please do be aware that it may not translate perfectly. Thank you very much. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Matt Stanley. Matt graduated from York St John University in 2016 with a degree in film and television production. Matt is a production coordinator for the BBC Sport and has worked on the Open, the Ashes, and most recently, the 2024 Paris Olympics. So I would now like to pass you over to Matt and look forward to chatting afterwards.
Thank you, Kev. Yes, so just to do a quick introduce myself. So as Kev said, I'm Matt Stanley. I went to York St John from 2013 to 2016, and yeah, I had an amazing, great experience. What I'll just probably go into quickly is not talk for too long about, this is my life. But yeah, kind of just what I've been up to since I graduated and basically how my degree and my experience at York St John really helped my career. So I was very lucky enough when I graduated from York St John with a 2-1 in film and TV production. At the time, I wasn't fully aware of kind of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to work in the industry, but I was thought I'd go and see the world a little bit. So I traveled for a couple of years to explore the world and things, and when I was out there in places like New Zealand and Australia, it kind of hit home that it's weirdly media and TV and film is kind of where I want to explore and hopefully have a career in terms of promoting the power of media and stuff for like education and exploring cultures and people and the world. Ultimately, when I came back, I didn't have much work experience in the industry. But I found through surprisingly things like social media and Facebook Marketplace, I ended up starting in Jeremy Kyle, which was an interesting place to work. I will say that. It's so I did Jeremy Kyle and Judge Rinder for about a year. From that, it kind of made me realize the industry that I don't want to work in terms of that type of programming and things like that. But it definitely built me up as a person in the industry and provided a lot of skills that I could develop further from when I was at university. Following that, I've been able to work in Salford in Media City. So I moved over there when I was running on a few different studio programs, such as Question of Sport, Rolling in It, Naked Attraction, the first series, which was again an eye-opener in terms of the stuff that we can make that kind of really made me realize and push that I kind of want to go in a different direction. But from that, I had the very much luck of going to a networking event when I was out in Media City, to a sports networking event where it was mainly aimed at freelance producers and editors and stuff. But there's me who's, I think I was at the time, I was like 24, very new to the industry, trying to do things, but just for what's the risk of going, and I luckily ended up speaking to a previous graduate from York St John in her, I won't say the name, but she was a production manager for BBC Sport in football. And so she actually gave my first real insight and, foot in the door of the industry within BBC Sport where I am now. So I was just doing the odd kind of running studio stuff for Match of the Day and Football Focus, which was a bit mental because as a big sports fan myself, watching people on TV, and then I'm basically in a room with, your Gary Linekers and the Alan Shearers and stuff like that, and just chatting to them and working with them. yeah, that kind of gave me my foot in the door. Things while I was still doing that was freelancing on a few other studio things in the area. And then I was very lucky enough to be given a short-term freelance contract on the Tokyo Olympics, to be working in studio in Salford, what they were doing. But while I was working on that, it was quite interesting to see how the COVID started to happen, and we can, I still envision it now while I'm working here, working on the studio stuff, and just seeing week by week, knowing that we're going to go, the team are going to go to Japan, and then there's this virus thing going along, and it just kind of, before you knew it, everything was shut down, everything was stopped. Obviously, I moved back home, worked from home. But surprisingly enough, that also gave me another opportunity, that I was given a short-term studio production contract for a company called Daisy Studios, and they promote things like provide stuff for things like Yorkshire Vets and how it was built and things like TV programs, mainly Channel 5 stuff. But that kind of really upped my career and skill set in working in production as a production secretary, and work things like that. I only did that for about 3 or 4 months, and then literally the day that my contract ended on that, 2 hours later, the previous production manager that I was working with, who I met at that networking event, said, "Oh, we've got someone who's moving into production coordinating from a production managing assistant, and we need someone to cover for 3 months on football." Knew that I'd obviously worked in a studio and done stuff. Basically bit the hand off. So I was very lucky that I was unemployed for about 2 hours. And then I started that the following Monday, and then it's kind of just steamrolled from there, really. I worked on football for 3 months. Then I transferred over to the cricket team. So when we were working on there for like test matches, and obviously the Ashes and the T20 World Cup, but it was the first year of the 100, which surprisingly enough, I was one of the first people within production to work alongside a production manager and a team to really use this flagship sport competition, should I say, for BBC Cricket, and really push that, which was, again, an amazing experience, quite hard and difficult, because you're traveling to different venues every single week to, day on, day out, kind of covering all this stuff. But yes, and then from that, I did that for about 1.5 years with that team. I was then very lucky and was made staff for BBC Sport. And then following that, I've ended up moving over to major events. So specifically then from about 2022 to now, working on the Paris 2024 Olympics. Which was in the space of about 6 years of where I was to where I was now. It was kind of quite a surreal moment, but one I didn't take for granted. But while I was working on that, because it's quite a slow build up for that kind of stuff, I've assisted and helped other areas of the team, such as, like Kevin had already mentioned, I worked on the Open, and I worked on the Ashes on the cricket again, and then I went to Budapest for the 2023 World Athletics Championships, which was kind of my first real insight into that side of sport, and being out in a foreign country working on a major event, and which was a great experience, and really developed my skills and really pushed me for where we were going to be doing in Paris. And then I've literally just finished on the Olympics and the Paralympics for BBC Sports TV, and then BBC Radio and Digital for the Paralympics specifically, because we didn't have the rights for that, for TV rights, should I say. But yeah, that's just all finished, and then I'm here now. So yeah, this is kind of where I've been, and wanted to speak to anyone who wants to seek advice or help or anything, to try and maybe have a similar career or get into the industry, and see how I can help. Thank you.
Cool. I shall rejoin. Some really interesting kind of details there about, I guess, your experiences post-university, both directly related to your career and I suppose the venture that compelled you to to sort of commit to working in that career. And I'm going to start off with some questions from an alumni perspective, if that's okay. But before I come on to those, just one curiosity that stems from the points that you made there. You spoke about how, I guess, on the back of traveling, you wanted to get into the media industries with aspirations around kind of the educational benefits of media and so on and so forth. And then kind of fell into shows on working with Jeremy Kyle and Judge Rinder and what have you, and perhaps reflecting on those experiences, determined that that wasn't necessarily the way that you wanted to kind of go with the career. With you now ended up in the kind of sporting realm, so to say, do you still hold on to any of those kind of aspirations that you outlined? That I suppose were your kind of initial sort of nudge towards a career in the media industry after traveling around?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, so it's actually still a goal of mine now, basically to go down within the BBC, hopefully, and actually do things on the side where I can help people get into the industry and really push. I think at the moment it's a very crucial time in television where there's, especially within the BBC, that there's a lot of sports and dramas and things like that, and I feel there's not much things aimed outside of real things that people can utilize on television and say, actually I learned stuff from today. I think it's pushed home a bit more within, in sport, when you go on these major events and you go to these different destinations in these worlds, there's always a editorial side of things where they kind of still want to promote where they are and how we do things and stuff, and especially on the Olympics and the Paralympics more so, that there's so many different demographics and so many different athletes from around the world and how they all come together for these kind of events, and it kind of really pushes for people to, I don't want to be cheesy and stuff, but to, dream for their own goals and things. And it was while I was on that, I kind of realized that I'm in a very lucky experience and opportunity where I can do this type of job. But at the same time, I really want to, push the importance and benefit of things like within the media and how the media works and how it can actually, shape people's lives and, educate, like I said, educate and things like that. And it's still something that I really want to get involved in within the BBC. I think personally, the BBC is in a bit of a crux at the moment with, public image and things like that. And it's kind of someone who's still kind of new to their career. I want to get involved in different communities and helping people through the BBC and just, really touch people's lives and just use this tool, as I say, to, just try and make the place a bit better at the moment, which I feel like it's kind of a hard and difficult place at the moment. But to do that, I still wanted to try and, get as much as I can into the industry and really have a base level and then develop it from there. I think it's such a, I mean, people might already know it's quite it's a challenging industry to get into, and people can kind of, I don't want to say settle, but they kind of get quite comfortable on what they want to do and how things work. And there's a different demographics within the industry that are kind of, some are quite old school how things work, and there's how things change and stuff. But because we're coming into a more digital and type of world, I think that media is really shaping into that way, and it's something I want to really get involved in and push further. So it is still something, to answer your question, in the back of mind, that I still want to really do and push.
Yeah, no, it's nice, and I suppose, like you allude to, that capacity to have a positive impact on people, culture, and what have we is perhaps a beneficial side aspect of the joy that you no doubt take from the work that you do and the experiences that you've had as part of it. Okay, so I'll move on to some alumni related questions. What would you say is the single best piece of advice you've been given by somebody during your career journey?
I'd say there's actually two things, if you don't mind. Like, the first is actually surprising. When I was at university at York St John, someone said, I can't remember off the top of my head, it was just something in passing I think I heard, but it was someone said, always be memorable. And I think that comes true into then what advice I was given when I first started out into the industry, surprisingly, on a studio job. And it was that don't take things personally, but always be memorable, and in the sense of that, and be professional. So what I mean by that is, when you first start out in the industry, you kind of get lumbered with some of the, not so glamorous jobs. But basically what I'd say to anyone who does get into the industry and they look at these types of roles and be given these types of jobs, that take that opportunity just to do the best job that you can, and make it memorable, and make that one slightly, not so glamorous job or anything like that. For example, when I worked on Jeremy Kyle, I was given a pack of cigarettes and a schedule, and my first job was taking people down to have cigarettes and then bringing them back into the room and stuff like that. And so obviously it's not the glamorous world of television and things like that, but I would just make sure that I was there on time, I was there professional, constant communication with like the production coordinators and the production managers to say, like, these are where these people are, I'm with them, bringing them back up now. And it was just that side of things that, make any job the best job that you can, for you to then impress someone else. So when you're in this industry and you're really trying to get your foot in the door and it's hard, like, people are going to remember that. So I think that was the number one piece of advice I was given from when I first started out in the university, coming through the course. What I took with me, took into the industry, and then developed it further, is that be memorable and professional, but don't take it personal either, because you giving a rubbish job, the worst thing you can do is just moan about it, because you're still going to have to do the job. But if you moan about it and have a negative view on it, then they're not really going to look at you as, someone further down the line and to hire. So yeah, that's probably the main bit of advice I've ever been given, that I kind of just brought with me throughout my very limited but quick career so far in the industry, in the sport. And I've just developed it all the way through. Anything I do, big, small, anything like that, I kind of just go with the same mentality of be professional, be memorable, don't take it personal.
Because I guess ultimately everything that you do builds up your kind of reputation, doesn't it? And
True.
As soon as you get any element of a negative reputation, it's not a good thing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like, and that's what I'm saying. Even if there is something where, for whatever reason, there might be something that comes across where someone has something negative to say to me, it's just, again, find out why, how I can change that, what have I done wrong, how I can improve it in the future, and things like that. But again, so don't take it personal. But yeah, it's you constantly, like, yeah, how do I word it? You're constantly on watch in this industry. I think you'll say it's every day is a new day to excel, but also a new day to impress someone.
Excellent. Okay, so I mean, specific, if you can recall, what would you say was the most relevant module or aspect of the course that you did at York St John that helped you develop your skills that you've been putting into effect in these various career movements that you've made over the last 6 years or so?
It's been a while to go to think that it was a specific module, but I think just that environment of, which I'm hoping is still there, around all the tech guys, and we had that studio set up, and how it all works with, I think we did a magazine type show for one of my modules, and it was that type of how it was kind of our first real insight into how things might work on a studio set. So in terms of, you'd have a floor manager and 3 cameramen and a fixed camera position, and then at the back you'll have someone in gallery that would be doing some type of producing or talk back and things like that. And it was just those little key skills that kind of really I found straight away and comfortable with when I got my first, type of running roles in the industry and using like radio mics and things like that. Like it's just those specific small skills and communication within that that really helped with it. Obviously you would have editing, the look of having, we were very lucky when I was there, we got, Avid editing suites and sets and stuff like that, which is completely for free. And using those types of skills and developing those tech side of things, which was quite helpful. Obviously now not within my career in production, we do that less, but in terms of just knowledge and understanding of what these things are and how things work like that, and just even the lingo, I think, is quite helpful. You don't kind of go in with the completely new to it all, and I think it's just that again, you get a base level of experience and a base level of skill to really fall back on that you can then develop with as you go into the industry. So I think from my time in university and those modules, and I think even in my third year and stuff, and just going out and making films and stuff, it was just that creative push to really help with really make me realize while I was outside of university and further that this is actually something I really want to get involved in. So I think from my time at university, those experiences that were, looking back, quite very beneficial, but also don't take for granted that these things were handed to me to help and things. And I think that's when you leave that environment of university and then you're kind of on your own, nothing's free, nothing's there to be given to you to do, like, have this opportunity to just go and explore and be creative and things like that. The real world kind of hits in and you've got to find work to pay for rent and pay for bills and things like that. And it's just when you're at university, you're in that environment that's just, these people are here to help you be the best that you can be and guide you for when you leave university, and to have that creative element, which yourself, Kev, and others I remember were really, really supportive of doing. And like looking back now, that's, something people really shouldn't take for granted while they're at university, and really use that time well.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's almost sort of embrace it as a playground in a way.
100%.
I mean, on the sort of premise of looking back, what would you say was your favourite memory of York St John University?
Apart from going to pound a pint at the SU, it was no, I think just the people, and like I said, just the meeting fellow people that were interested in the industry and have like this excitement and creative input, and then meeting and having these experienced people like yourselves who have been in the industry or experienced it and have their own knowledge and stuff. I think overall within the university, it's just you meet so many different people from different backgrounds and different lives, and it was just building friendships and colleagues and things like that was really, really helpful and exciting, and that social side of things. And like I said, just the opportunity in that free time just to go off and like you said, playground type style of just go off and explore and enjoy it and stuff. And life is very short in that, from what I've realized, and it's the university can be the best time of your life for that reason. You're no longer a child that is having stuck in school. You'll become your adult on freedom, but it's also using that freedom to just be a better person and try and develop those skills and lives and stuff. So I think just York St John in itself was just really epitomized that as obviously it's whenever people meet up and they'll say, yo, what did you go to university? It's like, yeah, I went to York St John. He's like, oh, York. It's like, no, York St John. It's actually, and I'm really defending of that, because as much as other universities are great and things like that, what I thought was really special for York St John was, yes, it's a small uni, but everything becomes a lot more personal. You feel you can actually have a relationship with lecturers and your fellow students, and you're not just a number. The time that I was there, I felt if I needed any advice or any help, anything like that, everyone was approachable, and it was a lot easier to do, because I guess on that type of being in a much smaller uni, it's there's a lot more benefit, I feel, than just going to other universities that are more prestigious, but you're thousands upon thousands of people and stuff like that. You still get the same degree and piece of paper at the end. It's the experiences that you're there and the people that you meet there that I think are really beneficial, and one that I truly really enjoyed when I was there.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more with you. I think the sort of sense of community and not being lost in the kind of sprawl of a much bigger city university is one of the appealing aspects of life at York St John. What transferable skills do you think you developed from your degree that have been really kind of beneficial and you've taken with you out into the world?
Well, I've already said it once, as communication and teamwork, and just meeting and speaking to different people from different environments, and just developing those personal skills. I think it's one thing that I do think takes for granted in this industry is that we're not robots. People who are like cameramen or editors and stuff like that, they're still people, and I think more so in production, where you do a lot of the logistics planning and organizing of it to allow the people around you to do their jobs and creative. But if you can get down to them on a human level and communicate with that way, you kind of build relationships better, and it just makes the overall job and experience a lot easier. I've worked with various commentators and presenters and things like that, and people can become a little bit, I don't want to say starstruck, or like or we must bow down to them and hold, look after them and all this kind of stuff. But as well, at the same time, there's still human beings, and 9 times out of 10, they'll actually appreciate if you just talk to them on a human level. Not in the sense of, like badgering them or asking for a selfie or anything like that. It was just more of like, do they need anything when they arrive, early in the morning, things like that. And it was stuff like that when I was at university, that was very, very helpful. And I think also this ability from when I was at university, not that I'd ever recommend it and stuff, but obviously with my dissertation and things, people were leaving it later and later and later, but working under pressure and that environment. And I think you become into it. This industry in itself is a very high pressured environment. So the ability to work under pressure and adapt is probably the main key skills that I work in this industry on a day-to-day basis. And one that level of pressure and scale of working at university from an academic side of view and creative side of view, and working to deadlines and things like that, it was one that completely transfers over to the working life in general, but especially in television.
Excellent. I mean, before I ask one last question related to alumni, just to pick up on a point that you made there, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you've been entirely starstruck?
I would say recently, just from a sporting level, was when I was in Paris, that I was briefly working with Zinedine Zidane. But I think I was more starstruck because it was in Paris and everyone else in France was starstruck. So I felt like I also had to be starstruck. But outside of that, not completely. I think I learned early on, when people say don't meet the heroes and things like that, that's it's a bit of a negative way of thinking about it. But I think if you go in with the mindset of that person is also just another human being, they've got their own lives and their own families and things like that, and it's all a job, it makes it a lot more comfortable. Whereas I feel like if you just go into the mindset of like, oh my god, like that's will I am, or like when I previously worked on The Voice and stuff, and there was like Tom Jones, and it's just like these are people that you grew up watching and listening to and things like that, and it was just the one thing I couldn't remember is actually he's actually quite small as Tom Jones. So it was so stuff like that, but it was like that type of mindset. So I don't think outside of probably sporting environments, meeting, I've met Usain Bolt, which is kind of surreal, like this is just, but more from the fact of this is the fastest man in the world. It's just, these little things like that. I don't think there's many other people in television that, you look back on and you just think, they're, got a specific thing about them. I think it's just in general, I think you kind of go behind the curtain when you work in the industry and stuff like that, and you actually see people differently than what you might see them on television and stuff like that, which is, can be a very good thing, and sometimes not a great thing, but 9 times out of 10 it's it's a really, really cool place to be and really nice.
Excellent. And I guess it kind of comes back a little bit to what you were talking about before in terms of being memorable. You don't want to be memorable in the wrong way, being perceived as the kind of excited little child when actually you've got a professional job to do.
Yeah. I mean, from if you don't mind, I said there's the story when I worked on. I think I was working on a show called Rolling in it, and we had the voice on at the same time, and there was a runner that we were working with there, and we couldn't ever find them on comms because they were basically just stood outside the studio, like the what's it, like the dressing rooms, and basically just there with a camera, and then just waiting to grab like selfies and things like that and stuff. And I think it was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was there at the same time, so it was like Jeremy Clarkson was in his room and stuff like that. And it's just I don't think that the person working on that ever ended up coming back. But you kind of get into this world of I'm there to work and I'm where to do things and stuff, and it's the job comes first, and you just look back and kind of go like, oh yeah, my where I've just been today was really cool. And but I think I do take things for granted now, where I work in this environment where you just seeing famous people kind of just is part of the job, and you just get used to it, I guess. But yeah, I won't lie, when you first start, it's kind of a surreal moment to look into it. But from what we were previously saying with skills and experiences that before coming into the industry, I was like, I'm here to impress and I'm here to do a job, not, I don't want to squander that by getting too excited about, some famous person coming down the corridor.
Yeah. So, contain your enthusiasm and put the autograph book away.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. No autographs. It's like, yeah.
Okay, so before I kind of move on to some career-based questions, one last question from an alumni perspective, and I guess a perspective reflected on your time at York St John. What do you wish you could say to your younger self when they were at university?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it already, I think, and I'd probably push even more, is that you have all this free time, in sense of you while you're at university and stuff, and you're working hard and you're studying, but at the same time I had a lot of downtime that I could utilize better, I think, really start getting my foot in the door and get that experience, even if it's just working on different jobs or different experiences. And like you said, using just trying to gain more insight into where I want to go and what I want to do. Because I think I left university not really sure fully kind of where I wanted to be, which was, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I'd say, people can, lives change, the world is very different. But I think I look back and I probably, if I had more of an idea and more of a focus of where I wanted to go and kind of utilize that time specifically to really speed things up for when I left, I would probably say that about myself. I've kind of got here in the end of where I wanted to go and learn things on the way, but I think it was just life is short, but utilize the time that you've got. And I think just outside of in that environment, and you come into why I wanted to come to university and what I wanted to do, I think just really focus on what you wanted to achieve, basically.
No, good advice. I think it's difficult in some respects, isn't it? Because when you go to university, you're living in the moment. So, a few years after, retrospectively, you can look back and think, oh, I probably could have done a little bit more studying or exploration or what have we. Yeah. But certainly, I think it's a really strong thing that you put forward there, that notion that actually once you've got those 3 years at university, make the most of them. Because unfortunately, what folks don't tend to realise is after those 3 years, your time's going to be taken up by jobs, bills, families, whatever it may be.
Exactly. I think don't be afraid to fail when you're at university, I think is the sense. I'd probably go with, like, not in a fail in the sense of like, your workload and things like that, and your assignments, things like that, but just don't be afraid to try and pursue new things and have that fear of failing, because you could fail being something you don't want to do, so you might as well dream and do something new and exciting that you might have never done before in that safety net of university, because there's there's no harm in that. There's no, it doesn't affect you in the outside into the, once you get into the real world, there's a lot more responsibilities and a lot more pressure. So yeah, don't just utilize that time and just go and have fun and develop.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll move on to some career-based questions, with the first one being, what advice would you give to a graduate applying for their first job in the TV industry?
First job. Firstly, yeah, I would say firstly, from when you're in university, try and just get as much experience as you can. I surprisingly, it's a lot harder to do because obviously people have experience. It's really hard to get into the industry and how to get your foot in the door. But if you just, I found jobs surprisingly on social media. So there's various Facebook posts that have like, runners in the north or anything like this, and there's different Facebook pages throughout the country and stuff, and there's constantly things being posted on there. And I just think, yeah, just if you're really interested in this industry and have an idea of where you want to go and what you want to do, just try and find as much information as you can. Go into your local sources, look, like, even if it's not you want to work in television, but there's like local radio stations or anything like that, just anything where you can try and get some sort of creative input and experience onto your resumes and CVs before you leave university is really, really key and beneficial. But at the same time, there's, surprisingly like hundreds upon hundreds of jobs out there for people to get their foot into the door and stuff. And it just takes that one moment at one job to really, like I said, when you get that opportunity, don't waste it, go and be the best that you can be at doing that. And then don't be afraid when you've had that experience on that one job of going and finding the person that hired you basically for that job to say, if there's anything else coming up, I'm really keen, I'm really interested, and things like that, and maybe get a contact number or a contact email and just go from that side of things. Like I'm not one that's very much for pushing for someone to be cold calling people out the blue in terms of actually ringing up and just, I'm really keen to work in the industry and I want to do that, because so is hundreds of people. But there's nothing wrong with just an email to say, here's my CV. If there's anything you can keep it on the books and recommend me for anything coming up in the future, then that's great. But it's more from when you have that experience of when you've actually got into that first job and then developing it from there. But yeah, 100%. What I didn't know at the time until I was already in there was in the industry was you actually using things like social media and more so now, things like X, or it used to be Twitter and things like that, that there's actually digital things and social things out there that can really is a great tool now that we wouldn't have had years and years and years ago in terms of how things were advertised and how you can get in there. So there's a lot of opportunities through social media, which is just to get your foot in the door and that experience, but try and do it while you're at university in the industry, because you have this time to go and explore. And don't worry about if you're really keen, make it work in terms of even if it's a job, you're based up north and there's a job in Scotland or London and stuff. If you have a car, just go, try and really be pushing to do it if you really, really want to do it. Obviously financial things can be difficult, but that's why then if that's not possible, just anything where you can get anywhere on like public transport and stuff like that, like just that's how I'd recommend. Just realize where you are in a position of where you are financially, location, environment, and then you really utilize those social media.
Grand, great advice there. I mean, you sort of touched a little bit on how you kind of got the role at BBC Sport and how you sort of moved into that area. So I guess one question that I'd like to pick up on that sort of follows on from the question before, you did mention that I think a networking event was kind of the catalyst for moving into that that domain. So I wonder, what kind of advice would you give on the networking front? Because obviously, for somebody who wants to work in the TV industry, they want to build a network of connections. And I guess, as you've just alluded to, a lot of that is about making a good impression, getting some experience, and you having that in your armory for when you're at networking events. But how important is that sort of networking side of things still in today's kind of industry?
Oh, still massively important. I think it's still a key, because a lot of the world is like, a lot of this industry, should I say, in this environment is freelance. And so people build relationships constantly through, one job or the next. And I think various networking things is absolutely key in terms of just, to really promote yourself and show someone that you're really, really keen, and you kind of get access to people that you wouldn't normally get access to. Actually you get to see someone face to face in these networking things that might just be behind an email, or it just goes through a generic email thing, and then you get put onto a power. Whereas actually, if you physically speak to someone in person, they kind of know who you are, and that experience like that down the line, 9 times out of 10 will get you further than just random emails and things like that, which is key. And I think slightly how I worded it wrong earlier, I might have said, was this networking thing that I went to, which really got me my foot in the door in that sense of things, was it wasn't really aimed at me, and I kind of just went on it with a punt of going, it's still a sport and networking thing in the BBC. I didn't know much about it, and I just thought I'd go. And I think it kind of resonates a lot with actual people, that if you're, sorry, what was I saying? By going to these events, you're already showing that you're interested in this industry and you're already keen to work in it, because you're turning up with not really knowing anyone, and that, already making that first jump. And that's more memorable for a lot of people that in the industry of going, well, that person isn't afraid to, step up, or even just talk to someone, talk to strangers, just open up about themselves. And I think it's one that I don't think a lot of people really, I remember me as a student, that fear, I guess, of going to speak to strangers and networking events and things like that. But you find that these are the same people that work in the same environment that you want to work in. And I think that's just in all of life. I don't think that's just in our industry specifically. I think that's just in careers. If you have a passion and a job that you want to be around people that also have the same passion and a job, they'll be 9 times out of 10 more helpful than, like you said, just trying to go on to, send my CV here, send my CV there. So if you can, again, going back to your previous question, I think as well with graduates and things like that, is just don't be afraid to go out and, explore and go to the network conventions that you can. I think, especially up north, I think there's things like Screen Yorkshire, and again, there'll be stuff advertised on social media and things all the time, especially in Media City, in Manchester and stuff, or be in London. Things there should, be various things going on all the time, and just and 9 times out of 10 these things are free as well, so you can just go. And worst that can happen is you've gone and nothing comes from it, but you've already broken a barrier of going once and realizing they're probably not as scary as what they are, and so you just go to another one or go to another one, and it's a good way as well to get into the industry, or just speak to someone, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, practice as well, like going to networking events at university. I think there's different activities and things that go on, or different social things and stuff, and I think if you can build up that confidence and go to things like that, it's really beneficial.
And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, isn't it? That just by attending those sort of events, you're demonstrating a commitment and an enthusiasm. So, really, really good. What sort of advice would you give to graduates who didn't want to relocate to London to pursue a job in production? What opportunities should they look out for in the kind of north of England or regionally?
Again, I'd previously alluded to it. I think we've moved up from a world of, especially within the BBC now, with it's not all in London. I think they're really pushing it over the last few years to really push things up north, and really utilise the location and landscape that we have in places like Yorkshire and Manchester, and the north of England, just for like filming opportunities and things like that. And like there's companies like Screen Yorkshire that are really, really keen for people to get involved into, and you can go onto their, there's like on their system of like books and things to, basically you put in where you live and what you'd want to work in and things like that. And there's always a chance that you can get involved in things like that. But yeah, I think even more so post-COVID, I work, my job 9 times out of 10 is I work in an office. So I work off a laptop, but I don't have to physically be in an office space to do my job. And I think it's really pushed it more with COVID, that side of like working from home and that environment. But yeah, going up, like I was saying, no, but it's not all in London. There's still lots in London. And I think there's a lot, there'll of course be big opportunities for people in London, but don't be worry about that kind of thing. There's literally a lot of things going up north, and I think it's even being pushed further. I think it's more an exciting thing than this idea that you must go to London. Like I think it's changed dramatically from that side of things.
Yeah. Okay, so you've covered kind of quite a few of the questions that are on the list in some of your earlier answers. So as a means of, I guess, because I'm quite conscious that we're coming to the end of our time as well. So as a means of kind of wrapping it up in a nice way, is there a particular project that you are really kind of proud of? And with that particular project, were there any particular challenges that you encountered? And I guess in some respects, that might be something that makes one project stand out above another, just the challenges that came with working on it and how you overcame them.
Yeah, ultimately, I think the biggest thing at the moment is for my career and that I'm very proud of is the Olympics. I think it's in terms of scale, the pressure, responsibility of working in a team to create something that the whole, millions of people will watch around the world, is probably the biggest achievement of my life so far, and one I made sure I didn't take for granted. When I was there, just to embrace and being in that environment and just kind of look back and go like where I was to where I am now. I'm in the Stade de France working, covering stuff on the athletics in Paris for the Olympics, and to seeing those rings and stuff like that and seeing the opening ceremony and stuff. It was a really special and cool moment. But with that, naturally, it comes with its own challenges. One being that this was the first Olympics that's post London, that's the closest for us to produce and film. But we're really pushing how the world is going now, a lot more sustainable things. So we really aim to have like 92% of our crew and staff went by train and Eurostar. Some people even like cycled over, like they were doing their own editorial thing called like Road to Paris, I think it was. And Catherine Granger, ex-Olympian, and a couple others, and the producers and cameramen, they all cycled from, I think, Manchester all the way to Paris and documented it all on the way and stuff. But yeah, with its own challenges, in Paris, they have their own working time directive and their own logistics in terms of how many hours that they can work. And when we were there, building up to it, should I say, for planning of it, you kind of thought, why did Paris want the Olympics when they have so many different like things stopping them from covering a major event that this is, and that we had to follow those by law, so we had to make sure all of our crew had to have 11 hours off before they started another shift. They couldn't work more than like 8.5 hours, or if they did, it would have to affect another day for them to have a day off. And trying to do that over 20 days of basically high profile covering that starts from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night, logistically it was kind of a real challenge, but we made it work. So I think, yeah, that's just one side of things that it comes on that scale. On the other is I was responsible for getting 450 crew out there into Paris, which not just myself, but within a team, and just making sure that everything ran smoothly for them to, when they get there, they know where they were going to get their accreditations or even into the hotels, and getting the passes that they need to go into the stadiums and film and things like that. And it's just all those little small things that kind of built up that just try and make things run as smoothly as possible, but are essential to make these things work, which I don't think a lot of people always think about. I think from what they see on TV and the screen, it's actually the lot of stuff behind the scenes that makes the program what it is, that is essential, and really shining just from that scale. That was still half of our crew. We had the other half, like a lot of the directors and producers and editors and stuff, all back from Media City in Salford, so they weren't even in Paris. But that was just more for the fact of that then they weren't restricted on the labor laws in Paris and stuff, and then also from a financial side of things. But yeah, it went from the Olympics of 456 crew to when we did the Paralympics just for radio and digital, because we didn't have the TV rights, to 36. But the 36 in its own had its own, challenges and logistics just from the environment of being a Paralympics. So there's a lot of, access issues and things like that you have to deal with, and people who have, some sort of difficulties and that you might need to support and things like that you don't normally think about doing when you're working in TV and things like that. And you just want to make sure that I'm the first point of contact for support for whatever people need and help with. So it had its own challenges, but yeah, the Olympics, Paralympics, 100% are probably the biggest achievement so far.
Excellent. And any sort of exciting projects in the pipeline?
Yeah, I'm moving on to sports journalism for 6 months. Not within journalism myself, but we're still within production. But I'm working a lot more closely with like news and their coverage. So I'll be supporting the teams going out to, it's a lot more reactive. So, I might have to have a journalist go to the Middle East within 48 hours. I might have to have someone going to Monaco for the Formula One or something like that. It's a lot more reactive and stuff, which I'm excited about, but it just means I get to experience a lot more. But I also feel like I was alluding to at the beginning, I'm moving into this environment where I kind of feel like I'm, even though it's still sport, but we're focusing on issues and challenges that affect the real world, and it's that kind of coverage of it all that I'm getting involved in. And then outside of that, I've got an outreach project with the BBC that I'm supporting, which is basically helping people from like various disabilities or challenges who feel they don't get enough support within the industry, and we're kind of just trying to push that flagship of giving opportunities for those people to one, common experience how the BBC and stuff works, but also just ultimately there might not be a job at the end of it for everyone, but it kind of just gives them a confidence and push to that there is help out there and the support, and it's something that I'm very interested in doing and supporting, and again showing that the BBC and TV and film and in general is just, it's a really great place to work, and one that I definitely don't take for granted.
Excellent. Well, I think we've covered a good amount of territory, and that's a nice point to wrap things up on. Obviously, time slightly against us. I could probably talk for hours on end. But some really insightful kind of overviews of your own experiences, and some invaluable perspectives that hopefully some of our listeners will take on board and put into good effect in their own careers and their own future lives. So I'd just like to say thank you very much, Matt, for your time today. And from York St John to one of our York St John alumni, we wish you well for the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Gav. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.